We're all told the path to success is to drill down, right? To become more and more of a specialist. But what if that's all wrong? Today, we're diving into the story of a historian who built a global platform, not by knowing more about one tiny thing, but by understanding how everything connects. This is all about the power of zooming out and the incredible intellectual system of Yuval Noah Harari. And right there, that single idea is the whole key. I mean, think about it. Our entire world, professionally, academically, it rewards specialization. It tells you to know every single detail about a smaller and smaller slice of reality. But Harari, he made the exact opposite bet. He figured out that real influence, the kind that actually shapes how we think about the future, doesn't come from looking through a microscope. It comes from a panoramic view. He didn't want to fix one line of code. He wanted to understand the entire operating system of humanity. So that's what we're going to do here. This isn't just about why his book Sapiens was a bestseller. No, we're going to reverse engineer the entire mindset behind it. This is a story about a deliberate, almost military-grade strategic choice to just step back from all the noise, to detach from the stories everyone else is telling, and by doing that, gain this crystal clear view of the shared fictions that secretly run our lives. Everything from the money in our pockets to the nations on a map.
So how in the world did he find this totally different kind of power? Well, it wasn't some sudden aha moment. It was more of a slow burn, a growing realization that the old tools of history just weren't cutting it. They couldn't answer the really big questions. And that's where his journey to a whole new framework really begins.
Okay, this right here is the fundamental shift. Harari basically stopped looking at 70,000 years of human history as just a random jumble of wars, kings, and inventions. Instead, he started seeing it all as one long, continuous software update for our species. The cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, the scientific revolution, these weren't just events. They were massive updates to our collective human consciousness, totally changing how we cooperate and organize. His goal became to understand the entire program, not just debug one tiny little function. All right, I want you to picture this. The year is 2011. You're sitting in a university lecture. Your professor, Harari, gets up and just calmly suggests that the money in your wallet has no real value, that the country love doesn't physically exist, and that human rights are, well, they're a really powerful story we all just invented and agreed to believe in. For his students, this was totally mind-blowing. But for Harari, this was the moment. This was him doubling down on his most radical idea, that our species' superpower is our ability to create and believe in fictions, what he calls intersubjective realities. And that idea solidifies into what we're calling the Harari Model. It's this core strategic belief that your single most powerful, most lethal professional weapon is your ability to hold the biggest possible perspective. See, he realized that even though we live in a world of AI and gene editing, we are all still running on ancient hardware. Our brains are wired for the savannah, which makes us incredibly susceptible to good stories. And the person who can see those stories from the outside, well, that person has a serious advantage. But look, a perspective this powerful doesn't just appear out of thin air. This was no overnight success. His whole model for understanding the world was actually born from years of professional isolation, of academic rejection, and this very deliberate choice to stand apart from the herd. This period of his life, this was the forge. So before he was the Yuval Noah Harari, he was a medievalist at Oxford on a totally conventional path. The road was laid out for him. Become an insider, pick a safe, tiny little niche, like the metallurgy of Crusader armor, and just publish papers that maybe 12 other people in the world would ever read. But he saw that safe path as a kind of prison. He chose the other road, the path of the outsider, the objective observer who wasn't interested in the armor itself. He wanted to find the algorithm, the belief system that convinced thousands of people to put it on and march across a continent. And of course, the system pushed back. It pushed back hard. When he first finished the manuscript for what would later become Sapiens, every single publisher he sent it to in Israel rejected it. Every one. And the reason they gave is just, it's perfectly ironic. They all said it was too broad. The very thing that would make it a global phenomenon, its epic, sweeping scale, was seen by all the gatekeepers as its biggest weakness. They wanted a specialist, and he was giving them a map of everything. This timeline really lays it all out. He starts at Oxford, feeling totally boxed in by specialization. Then he hits a brick wall of rejection from publishers who just don't get it. And then, in the year 2000, he makes a decision that changes everything. He goes to his first 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And this wasn't just a wellness trip. It became a core piece of his intellectual strategy. These silent years, the decades where he had no recognition, they weren't just a waiting game. This was the forge. This is where he built his internal fortress of focus and detached observation. You see, to get that kind of breakthrough perspective, he had to systematically unlearn our modern addiction to approval, to validation. He had to prove to himself that he could just be, in total silence, without a smartphone or an email ping, to rescue him from his own thoughts. He realized that if you want to truly observe the world, you first have to be able to observe your own mind without any distractions. His meditation practice became his private laboratory, where the only thing that mattered was raw, direct experience. This is where he found his intellectual sovereignty. So out of this intense, silent forge, an actual, actionable philosophy starts to emerge. This wasn't just about having big ideas anymore. It was about operating from a completely different foundation, one grounded in disciplined, hardcore observation. Let's be really clear. What Harari does isn't passive daydreaming. It's intellectual detachment as an active, rigorous strategy. It's the disciplined choice to stay an observer, to quiet all the internal chatter until the underlying patterns of the world just snap into focus. It's about seeing the shared stories that run our lives, like the value of a dollar or the power of a company, not as problems, but as humanity's greatest superpower. A superpower you have to understand from the outside. So to maintain this level of detachment, he came up with a simple but really profound rule. The species is the unit of measure. He realized that anytime you zoom in too close on a personal problem, a quarterly report, a single election, you get lost, you get caught up in the drama. But by making the entire 70,000-year story of Homo sapiens his default setting, he could look at current events not as shocking new crises, but as echoes of ancient patterns. He basically stopped being a character in the play and became the historian sitting in the audience, watching it all unfold. And this approach completely transformed his mind. It went from being a place for just, random thinking and forming opinions into a systematic laboratory. He had two inputs. On one hand, you had the cold, hard data from history, biology, and archaeology, and on the other, you had the direct experiential data he was gathering by just observing his own consciousness in meditation. The goal wasn't to have clever ideas anymore, it was to run experiments, to test his theories against the grand story of humanity and figure out what was actually real versus what was just another story. But, a philosophy by itself is just a nice collection of beliefs. What makes the Harari model so powerful is that he translated this abstract mindset into a set of concrete, daily rituals. These are the systems that protect his clarity. Harari understood this perfectly. A philosophy without a system is just a good intention. You can't just decide to be detached and focused in a world that is literally designed to distract you every second. So he built a rigorous infrastructure around his thinking, a set of non-negotiable habits that turned his intellectual philosophy into a high-performance machine for generating world-changing insights. One of his main mental tools is something we can call the Myth Audit. Let's use his famous example, the car company Peugeot. Okay, step 1, identify a truth. Peugeot was real, right? It has factories, it has employees. Step 2, zoom out. What is it really? It's not the buildings or the people. You can replace all of those. Step 3, expose the fiction. Peugeot is a legal story, a shared idea that exists only in our collective imagination. And then, step 4, observe its power. That shared fiction allows millions of strangers to work together. He does this with everything: money, laws, gods, nations. The second huge pillar of his system is his most famous habit, the no-device model. It's simple. Yuval Noah Harari does not own a smartphone. Now, this isn't him being some anti-tech Luddite. It's not a quirk. It is a strategic firewall. It's a deliberate choice to shield his mind from the constant flood of notifications, shallow opinions, and algorithmic outrage that makes deep, original thought almost impossible today. And this no-device lifestyle is built on a few core principles he calls foundational detachment. First, it's about refusing to buy into the simple, single story that social media algorithms are designed to feed you. Second, it's about creating the mental space to let the actual data speak for itself, without a constant roar of other people's opinions. And maybe most importantly, it's a conscious trade-off. He gives up the short-term dopamine hit of likes and retweets in exchange for the huge long-term prize of genuine, unshakable clarity. So, what's the end result of all this? What happens when you combine this unique philosophy with these incredibly rigorous systems and you stick with it for decades? Well, you get the payoff. you get the Harari model in its final, world-shaping form.
This number, this says it all. This is the canvas he paints on. When Harari sits down to think about a modern problem, whether it's AI or the future of democracy, this is his starting point. Not the last 24-hour news cycle, not the last election, but 70,000 years of human evolution. It's a perspective so massive that it makes our most urgent daily dramas look tiny, predictable, and patterned.
And that perspective has fueled a truly staggering transformation. I mean, the man went from being a niche medievalist, who only a handful of other academics had ever heard of, to being the global gold standard for clarity. He went from a rejected author to someone world leaders called to help architect a new moral conscience for our age. He stopped just studying the past and started using its lessons to help all of us define the future.
In the end, his legacy is the ultimate proof that zooming out isn't just some quaint intellectual hobby. It's a structural weapon for making sense of a ridiculously complex world. He showed all of us that a deep, clear-eyed look at our ancient past might just be the most important tool we have for navigating our technological future. He changed the conversation from the stories of individual kings and queens to the much bigger and frankly more important story of our entire species.
And this is where it all comes back to us, because this whole story, this intellectual journey of Harari's, it isn't just about him. It's a blueprint. It's a practical guide for anyone out there trying to find the signal in all the noise. This is it. This is the core takeaway. Harari's whole life teaches us that how effective you are is directly tied to your ability to shift your perspective. To stop being the reactive, emotional character who's constantly caught up in the daily drama and start becoming the calm, clear lens through which the bigger picture can be seen. It's about realizing you're not just a consumer of information. You can actually be a builder of perspective. So just take a second and think about this for yourself. What is your version of his meditation cushion? And it doesn't have to be literal. What is the place, the practice, the time that you intentionally set aside to get your own foundational detachment? Maybe it's a long walk with no phone. Maybe it's journaling for 15 minutes. Maybe it's just sitting in silence. Where can you go to zoom out and see the bigger systems at play in your own life? Here's a really practical way you can start. Sometime this week, find one thing on your calendar, a task, a project, a meeting, that everyone is treating as incredibly urgent. And just for a moment, apply the Harari model. Step back from it and ask yourself, what is the real truth here? What's the underlying story or assumption that's driving all this urgency? Just commit to that one moment of zooming out. Because in the end, that's the code. The overwhelming noise of modern life, that's a choice. You can opt out. The fictions we all live by are powerful, sure, but they are not the only reality. The real truth isn't found by digging deeper and deeper into the same narrow hole. It's found by gaining perspective. Your ability to consistently zoom out, to see the whole map, that is the key to clarity, to effective action, and to your own greatness. So I'll leave you with that question to think about. Look at your own to-do list, at your own anxieties. What seemingly urgent task is keeping you zoomed in, conveniently hiding a much larger, more important truth that you really need to see? Find it, zoom out, and see what changes.